Some after that. Actually, so nice. Should be like the new council, you know.
Yeah.
It's like feelings.
We're at Cambridge, 10 o'clock, 17 start.
Yes.
Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome everyone to the first ARC to Miromiro meeting for the triennium. Start with the opening karakia. Good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and great to have you back as our Miromiro Assurance Risk and Finance Chief. I'll give a traditional karakia to open our committee meeting. Te tawa mai runga, te tawa mai raro, te tawa mai roto, te tawa mai waho, kia tau mai te mauri tū, te mauri oho, te mauri ora haumi e hui e. Whai.
Thank you. Yes, it's. I feel like I've had unfinished business from the last triennium that needed to be finished up. Been on a journey for sure, and certainly in the audit and risk area 3 years ago, you wouldn't recognise where we're at now, but the job's not finished. And I sort of feel I've got a bit of a mission there to help you guys get through to a maturity curve. We've got good audit and risk fundamentals sitting there, but this triennium, my prediction is it's going to be a pretty rocky ride with change happening in all sorts of areas. We've got central government change. We've got restructurings happening with the water services entities coming out, and that's going to have an impact on things. We've got economic headwinds still, and in our two-stage economy that quite often gets done. Unfortunately, the economy up here is probably not in top gear like it is in other parts of the country that I travel to. There's just all sorts of risks sitting out there. Climate is making itself very evident in how many one to 100-year storms are we having. Down my home patch, it's currently looking as a potential state of emergency. I hear out in parts of out around the Banks Peninsula being hit. We've had the East Coast hit badly. Tasman got hit twice last year, which is another one of mine. So it's really there to do us, and we need to be adaptive. We've got to give value for money. And that's where risk comes in. And risk is about understanding where things can go wrong, pre-thinking about it so that you understand the very earliest signs of things going off the rails so we can take early corrective action and not just blindly carry on a route because that's what we planned, if indeed that route needs to change. So look forward to focusing at a governance level at where the big issues are and getting assurance from management and that the risks are being appropriately managed. So it's risk and assurance. So identifying the risks, understanding them, and then getting assurance that those are being managed. So in thinking about your papers and questions, first question probably, what is the risk and how are we managing it is the second one. And are we comfortable that management is effective? So if that gives a framework for perhaps when you're thinking about a question. Yeah, so this is not an environment to relitigate council policy. That's done in the chamber when its council is present. This is about implementing the agreed strategy, whatever it is. So that would be my thoughts, bit of background for those that haven't really met me there, that I do this for a number of councils around the country. So like far north here, of course, I've got Hastings, I've got Tasman and West Coast Regional that I chair. And I've also got Wanganui and Haranui, where I'm just I'm an independent member. So I'll also be bringing thoughts and insights from those places to the table and to the management team. We always have a few meetings around this on key stuff because I normally come up the day before just simply because of flight timings. So we make most of that time. Okay, there are no apologies. We have a full muster. Thank you, everyone, today. Any declarations of interest in any of the matters on the agenda? There being none. We've got no deputations, so invite Zena to the table.
What's your name, Graham?
Sorry?
Who's Graham's name?
He, I understand, was unable to be at this meeting. So I'm not sure whether he's officially yet been appointed. So thank you for that clarification, whether we should record an apology for him. If everyone's happy with.
Emma, has he been confirmed?
We are awaiting confirmation.
So I'm not sure quite where the status is there, and having two Grahams on the committee, this isn't the first time that Graham Naylor and myself we're on Environment Canterbury together.
Won't be confusing at all.
So it won't be confusing at all because as I was saying to Councillor Smulders, there when we had two Grahams on the board, we are spelt differently. But because I was there first, I became G1 and he became G2. And at Tasman was the same, that he was chairing it when I came on. I now chair that one as he reached his rotation. And we kept the protocol up there as well, G1 and G2. So I'm just quite glad that our names wasn't Brian, or would be B1 and B2. So, you know, we're both very comfortable with that approach to understand who it is. It won't be regarded as disrespectful in any way. So, yeah, we sorted that one out. And Councillor Suckling at Environment Canterbury coined that. And it was asked, are we comfortable with that? We were, so. Timings of the meetings, I'll work with that because there's a couple of meetings I think it would be wise to look at rescheduling if we can. Work with governance team after this meeting. One in particular is the November one, which would be good if it was probably 2 weeks sooner because of the 31 October annual report deadline. So no point having ARC after the deadline. So get it 2 weeks out, so that's a week ahead of your, at least a week ahead of your council meeting to approve. Last year was a bit of a scramble of the election. So Zena, welcome.
Morena kote. This is our first assurance, risk and finance for the triennium. So as each committee, I am always nervous. So there's all eyes on me.
You're amongst friends here.
But thank you for having me. So I will take that the report has been read. I know that we did receive some questions in relation to the report that we will address as a verbal update after the report. I just wanted to go through to highlight that due to the timing with the elections and the scheduling of the meetings, we are now in Q3. So we combined the report to include Q1 and Q2, but the numbers provided are as of the 31st of December, which is the end of Q2 as well. I do have a few notes. So just in regards to the collection that we have and are continuing to observe, the payments have been reduced from what we are receiving in rates across all boards. So that's rates, water for general title and multi-freehold land. Just in regards to that, due to A lot of changes within the wider team and supporting other teams. We have had to delay one of our main collection processes, which is mortgage demand, which we have now in this quarter issued notice 1 to 3 of our major financial institutions. All that information will be provided in the, of course, end of quarter 3 report. So in regards to that, there was a few questions in regards to, but before I move on to that, do I have any questions regarding the rate arrears for general title multi-freehold land?
Good chair. Kia ora, Zina. More so, my question was in our previous reports, we had started to include the amount collected so that we could give one of the narratives that I try and dispel that gets out there in our communities is that, especially for Māori freehold land, that Māori freehold land does not have to pay or that it doesn't pay. And so I just pulled up our previous revenue report for the previous quarter, and we're missing that additional line that we had in there, whereas in that one it was that we had, as of the 1st of July 2025, collected 2.something million from Whenua Māori, so that you can align that across what we aren't collecting to see that, oh, actually, we actually are collecting across that. But more so than that, can we be sure to, I know this is about revenue recovery, but it would be nice to have that across like the titles to know what we are collecting. Then you can have a look and weigh it up. Just on the amounts themselves. So when I go to the tables, and I know you've got percentages in the write-up, but the pages on 13, we're seeing across general title rates arrears, the total was $11.8 million. Year on year, it's been fairly stable around like $1.2 to $2 million, but our previous financial year is sitting at like double that for arrears. Am I reading that correctly on that table at the top of page 13? If you look across the years.
So as you can see from a year-on-year quarter comparison from last year, we were sitting at 10.3 million in arrears, and for this year we have increased to 11.8. So there is definitely an increase.
Million increase. Yes. And so using that, I can go to the Māori freehold and I can see that there is about a 1.3 million if I minus the totals across the year on.
That's correct. And in relation to your first question, yes, I did realise that I had missed that out. So for a verbal update for this year, 5.8 million was invoiced over the Māori freehold land rate accounts, and to date 1.5 million has been paid.
Do you have the amounts for general?
Not off the top of my head, I do not. That is something that has been brought in because it has been requested in previous meetings with Te Miromiro and Te Kuaka. It's us finding that balance of those numbers and those reporting as well for that, but we can look at including the current.
So through the chair, if I can add to that, what we've got is an internal program of works where we've got, when you look at this reporting here, this is legislatively required, this is by year, and you'll notice that there's no current in here. So in the annual report, we report normal commercial term, which is 30, 60, 90 days. So there's an internal program of works with business analysts where we're developing that internal reporting, and we'll be adding collection percentages into here for all sundry type debtors, or general rates, or Māori freehold land, a whole lot, and it'll be aged in another section which is the commercial section, which will be according to normal commercial terms. It's just taking quite a while to do because we've got a very old system, and it has to be, we have to write code for it.
Thank you for that, Ben. just finally, one of the reasons why I would like these numbers is we've had for my 2 terms, and this is my 3rd term on this council, policies to the effect to try and see to encourage multi-landhold owners by, say, wiping, because legislatively we're able to now wipe off that sort of debt, that we should start to see trends, I would hope, as we write off these amounts and start collecting when we sort out vital owners and who actually receives the bill and that sort of thing. We should start to see that balance out in the opposite direction, so that when we invoice for 5.8, we're collecting 5.8. But I know it's still a long journey, but I would hope that we could start to see trends across that as the numbers start to move.
Just in summary there, so the questions we've got coming through was that our mayor would like to see something like an opening balance, new rates levied, payments made to come out with a closing balance that reconciles. I think the concept is good, whether the systems and things are in place to do that. I think that's something that we ask Charlie and Ken and the team to have a look at. It's always easy to oversimplify someone else's job. So I can see that the reasons for this to give us a flow as to what's happening, but I'll perhaps leave it with the team to come back to say with the software that we've got, whether that in fact is an easy or a hard task to get everything to all reconcile. So, and with the Maori freehold land that you were raising about, I think one of the key questions is whether the invoices we've raised are valid. Have we recognised all the right land that the Central Government Act requires there is rebates on, whether we've given all of that? And my understanding is we've got about 2,000 or so of those in round numbers. And you're going through a process, working through each one individually to actually identify, to make sure we've got it right. And this is something where the old systems just haven't necessarily captured the status of the land correctly. So, that just speaks to Mayor's point. We have 3 questions lined up, and I'll take them in the order of Councillor Smulders, Councillor Foy, who has put one on screen. Thank you, Councillor. And then Councillor Bursavich had a further question. So,
my question was answered in that corridor. Just to follow up then, with given the new numbers, are we still sitting at rates arrears at 6% for Maori freehold land then?
Yes, because that is the current, those numbers that I just gave is what is current, and because I normally report on arrears only, so we are still sitting at the 6%.
Yeah, and Councillor Foy, you have.
so Councillor Foy's question on was really on, have we implemented the rating and general property management modules that reflect all of the operations, PNC, is it they call it, PNR module. I've seen with other councils online, so I've got a wee bit of knowledge of it. And I'll leave it perhaps for Charlie to answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a very
I'm
relevant.
sorry, Mr. Chair. Understand your rules. Can I speak?
Yes, you can. Sorry.
I wrote one of my questions in the chat just so that Charlie and Ken had an option to speak about it. It was actually about pathways in Tech 1 and for revenue collection, that in the regulatory department, they weren't able to interim invoicing. So we collected a whole lot of arrears from that department of council while we weren't able to do that. And you will have seen that as the chair under your chairmanship that wasn't addressed. In terms of what I've written there, Whangarei Council do it differently. So just basically highlighting to our staff to maybe look at how their council does it. And that means that their cash flows are much better into their regulatory arm of council through using Tech 1 to be able to interim invoice. So that's one aspect, and I'll wait until my next question. My second question is about doubtful debt, and I do ask this, and I did ask this in the previous triennium, and the cash flow planning for our rates, because when we strike our rates, $5.8 million is like a 5% of our rates take in terms of operational cash flow. If we've only collected 1.5 million of that, in terms of the OPEX funding that we strike our rates for, how much have we asked the general rate, or how much extra have we charged in the general rate to cover that doubtful debt of the amount of people that we're not sure we will collect the money for? And so this year, how are we addressing that when we strike our rates? Are we going to assume a higher amount of doubtful debt, so that we can have more realistic cash flow planning? Those are my two questions.
Very good questions, I might add too. Do you want to perhaps address the one on the invoicing first? Sure. And then the second one really is a risk that I want to have a wee focus on discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Foy raises a good point. It's unusual, the IT configuration that FNDC has with regard to two core systems and the billing coming out of a pathway system, as opposed to your financial system. We do have controls and checks and balances, etc., about the way that we monitor it, but there is an opportunity to make that more streamlined. It's administratively burdensome the way it's currently set up. We have a program of work underway at the moment where we're looking holistically at the IT infrastructure that council currently uses and whether it's appropriate for moving into the next LTP. We're anticipating bringing that through as a proposal, so it's on the Chief Executive's 100-day plan that roadmap will be completed and will be included in the long-term plan for elected member consideration, and that is absolutely one of the key points about the infrastructure environment, IT infrastructure environment generally, will be bringing to elected members to consider in the next long-term plan.
Yes, the modules there associated with Tech One are very highly priced to go in, so it's got to be quite a careful consideration as to whether it's worth the overhead of the inefficiency versus the cost of getting the benefit. So as a risk versus benefit assessment there, and the landscape in the ERP enterprise resource programming processing, which is the term used for all your IT systems that run the organisation. In broad terms, there's been some reasonably significant developments in that area from some of the competitive products out there with significant investments. So the landscape's changed quite considerably since about 2003 in this area. So it will need careful work, but we're talking a really large investment to go forward to get everything streamlined. So for a council of this size, one has to be questioning whether it is or whether there is a better option of being able to go into a shared services situation there. So that's a bit of a summary of the landscape that's sitting there and the changes that are out there at the moment. And I think this is just about a universal question that sits on the councils that I'm on as to which way to jump. Especially with in the light of potential central government reform, the WISCOs going out, there's going to be pressure on providers at the moment to set up 37, I think it is, WISCOs that are also going to use software very similar from the same providers, and the resourcing and ability for them to be able to resource is a question we need to think about. It's a risk that sits there if we headed into a project. Councillor Foy, I can see with my right glasses on, excuse me if I keep changing eye crutches, depending whether I'm looking at this report or on the screen. You have a further question?
Oh no, it was just a statement to reflect what you just said. I was just highlighting it because that's one of the opportunities to work with the other councils. There's no point, like, why do we have to pay for 2 subscriptions? Why don't we go in together with another council, like Whangarei Council, as I wrote in the chat? And I know that Charlie and our CEO are looking at those types of systems, because really, those are the types of efficiencies that we should be doing together.
It sounds very like the conversation I had about 30 minutes ago with Charlie.
Probably, I wasn't privy to that.
Around the traps.
And the other question I had, is that a Charlie question or a Zena question about the doubtful debt and the forward planning of cash flow in terms of the projection of rates in our next long-term plan?
I'll introduce it. Ken and Zena, feel free if you wish to add any further. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So council does provide an allowance in the long-term plan for doubtful debts. The number is in the ballpark of 2.3 million, I believe, which
2.5 million. So we've got a reasonably sizable provision there. But the auditors did ask us to take up more last year because of the trajectory of rates and payment rates. At the moment, we're going through the annual plan process. Certainly the long-term plan process, we'll be looking at modelling that, Councillor Boy, to ensure that we include that in our rates.
It's important to know, I guess, that in the running of any business, it is a standard accounting practice to have a doubtful debt provision. There is an expected rate. What we need to be doing is we have a model that we've applied historically. We do need to have further conversations with the auditors around aligning the expectations around that model, the trajectory of arrears balances. But we are cognizant that there is a concurrent work stream that we're working through the multi-freeholding piece to make sure that the billing that's coming out of that area is appropriate at the same time. So it's the convergence of multiple pieces of work to make that better informed piece of information.
We will be dealing with that item in the PX section with our draft audit findings that are coming up, how to refine that model. So that doubtful debts provisioning, we might just come back to, if we may. Everyone's happy with that.
Yeah, I'm happy to come back to it. I just wanted to highlight, I'm not sure where it's paid for, if the doubtful debt is paid for from the general rate, or if it's paid for from the UAGC, or essentially which ratepayers are paying, because I think that's part of our rating review, to make it really clear. If someone doesn't pay, like in doubtful debt, if we assume that at a high amount, is that coming out of general rates? And if that is coming out of general rates, that means people with larger land blocks are paying higher rates to reflect the accounting model that we have. Like, is that fair? Should we have a differential or another type of rating model to allow for that? I think that a rating review is really important, because we haven't reviewed our UAGC or our differentials for, might even be over 20 years. So really important. I'm just tabling that now, so that when we have a debate on it, it's not a surprise.
Yeah, that's probably a debate that will be happening in the council chamber as opposed to the audit and risk committee. Yeah, but the essence of it is that you've got total revenue, less doubtful debts will give you net revenue. So it's got to be funded from somewhere. Quite in the detail of where it's funded, which bucket it comes out of. But from a cash flow point of view, that's where our risk is. Our risk is that we've got a lot of money sitting out there, which we could be using to do good stuff in the community. And it does have an impact directly or indirectly on cash flow, therefore rates area. So Councillor Vesvach, you've been waiting a wee while.
Oh, no, I'm good.
My apologies.
And I'll be quick. So, look, I agree with you, Chair. This committee is to focus on where the risk lies, and that is the cash flow. But that's not my question. My question is regarding, it's more for maybe Zena or Ken. When you look at some of these figures on page 13 and onwards, it's a bit hard to tell from those. So I'm asking you for what you see as maybe Ken and anybody else can answer. If, for example, like the record debt year on year, and you can see the big jump I'm just wondering, because affordability is one of our risks, it's just what it's like out there, because when we come further on to look at our rates that we're looking at, we have a good understanding of the impact that we're actually having in the community with or what's out there actually financially. It's good to have. So how do you perceive the state of play out there?
So through the chair, so just in regards to that, we have been noticing a lot more ratepayers contacting us that they're not able to pay their rates. So we do rates easy pay calculations. So that helps people to break it down to weekly, fortnightly, or monthly, or annual payments. We are seeing a lot more of our ratepayers not being able to meet that minimum criteria. So we are offering lower repayment arrangements for short-term periods to try and help alleviate their financial strain within their own household. We have been a lot more proactive. So previous years, we brought this new process in last year to start pre-calling before we start our mortgage demand process, which we are finding we are having a lot more success in reaching out to ratepayers prior to us just issuing notice one for the mortgage demand process, of them coming back to us that we're trying to help, instead of having that stigma of council just wants to take a house. Unfortunately, that does go, is what a lot of ratepayers think about us. But so we are trying the more understandable and supportive approach to offer lower repayments. So we are receiving something and they're not getting so much more into debt. But
If I, sorry.
carry on.
If I can, through the chair, so in line with, well, unfortunately, in line with the downturn in economic conditions in the 7 to 8 months that I've been here, what I've seen is over the last couple of years, a trend, an upward trend towards slower rate repayments, a lot more rating planning for the council, the rates team, repayment plans, payment plans, therein. So that's something I've noticed here, and you can see there is an uptick in general rates and Murray freehold land rates that are owing. I don't know what that's like across all councils, but certainly here that is a trend. Now, long term, in line with the economy, once the economy turns, that's something that I expect will improve. But the thing is here that a mortgage demand is at the tail end. What we're trying to do is a lot more work, as Ina says, to try to not get to that stage, not get to the final. So when you've got a mortgage demand, pretty much you're not paying your rates. And we've got two avenues we can go down, which is the legal avenue and mortgage demands. We can't use debt collectors, unfortunately. And also we're doing the best we can, not to partner with our ratepayers, but to try to encourage repayment plans when they do come to us with difficulty. And we are doing cold calling. We are calling to see if people can pay, if we notice that things are getting up there.
That answers my question. Thank you very much. Thank you for also being proactive and taking initiative to try and ease the burden. Thank you.
Any other questions from members?
So I'm hearing you saying it's structural, not temporary. And what's the projected position at the year end?
It's a combination of both, through the chair, it's a combination of both structural and temporary. So when the economic conditions are better, people are going to pay, one of the first debts they'll pay is their rates. I mean, I'm like that. So, but long term, I've been here 8 months. I don't know what the long term trend is going to be over the next sort of 5 years. I've been for the last 2 years, and I've done trends over the last 2 years. It's a combination of structural and temporary. But in terms of, what was your question?
The projected position at this year end, because it will have direct implications for our borrowing and cash flow.
Yeah.
So we need to.
So we generally invoice about
38% up.
Yeah, about 113 million a year. So when we look at that there, we've got substantial headroom in our ability to borrow. we know we have thresholds for provenance. We're tens of millions below that. The big proviso with that is what's going to happen with the waters program. So I'm uncertain with how we proceed through that at this stage.
So, sorry if I can, so say for, if we add the two together, 4.5 plus 2.2 is what, 6.8 million that we have from the previous year, which is in revenue recovery. But that's of a total, what was rates in the last, this financial, like 118 million, 119?
Approximately this year.
So
113.
percentage wise, the total was huge, right? Of all the past years, that's a significant number. But the actual number, when we, so that we don't have to worry about our borrowing ability and all that sort of stuff, is actually quite a small percentage of the total amount. The amount that we are collecting in is significant and isn't that we shouldn't be overly worried that it's going to affect our ability to borrow.
I'm always worried about cash flow. Through the chair, I'm always worried about cash flow as your chief accountant. But in terms of, if you look at the last 5-6 years, this organisation, well over $500-600 million. So $6 million owing rates is a reasonably small proportion, but it's still too large in absolute dollars. Doing everything we can to ensure we bring that down.
Through the chair, I just might add on to that with our recovery options, we've separated everything out into two groups. So group one is every property that has a mortgage on the property. We are able to go down the mortgage demand process as per the Local Government Rating Act. So we will collect that debt through that process. Our other option we have is legal proceedings. So with that, we take the accounts, we go through to our external law firm that we use, which we then go through the courts for judgment, then which we end up, when we get judgment, we get that sealed so we can on-charge the legal costs as well, include that in. Then a charging order is placed on that property, so then that way the ratepayer is unable to transfer ownership or sell that property until that debt has been paid. If payments aren't coming in from that judgment, we can look at the courts doing a financial assessment. Once we get that financial assessment, it is up, we actually don't have that ability to say this is how much you need to pay. The courts actually base that on the affordability. So there are chances that we may receive $5 a week, $10 a week. So if there is a $10,000 to $12,000 arrears on that property that we've got judgment for, you can imagine how long that's going to take to collect that back. Our next step for that, which is the final stage for that recovery option, is a rating sale. So at the moment, I'm waiting. We have one property that has gone through with council's endorsement for a rating sale. But I am waiting for 3 reports from our external law firm with their recommendation for myself to put a paper to council for their endorsement for more rating sales. So that will be another 3 properties. They are also have started the abandoned land process. I'm waiting that report as well. We do have more legal recovery for court proceedings for arrears starting as well, and also they are working on the statutory demands as well. So we are doing as much as we can prior to us getting to that stage. So I just wanted to clarify that. Also, just to refer back to Councillor Foy's question about the interim invoicing for resource consent. So in my report, I have put in that the planning team have now bought an interim invoicing or intermittent invoicing. So now they are invoicing to a certain point, invoice goes out, the money is paid, then they move on through their application. So that has now been brought in, and that's just based on the updates for pathway to UX. And of course, was a lot of testing involved in that side of things. So then that way we can make sure that the process is correct and we are invoicing correctly as we go through for those fees and charges. So I hope that gives you a bit more clarification there, Councillor Boyd, and thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, you had a question?
Thank you. I'm trying not to be panicked by these figures, but I'm sitting here thinking, far out. So 38% increase is really, really alarming. And I sort of am thinking in my head, how do you get ahead of that? Because we can talk about how we're going to recover it, you know, demands on people's houses, mortgage recovery, all the things which I'm familiar with in my own work and having to deal with customers that go through that, which is not a nice thing to happen. My question, I guess, is, you know, if we end up in debt to repay the outstanding rates arrears, that's going to go back on the ratepayer ultimately. If we increase the rates to try and cover that, that's going back on the ratepayer, the ones that are paying. It's just like a vicious circle. Question is, payment plans, could it be made compulsory, or the first option that people pay their rates monthly, weekly, fortnightly first, right from the get-go? That's your first option. If they choose to opt out of that and pay them annually or quarterly, that's fine. But the very first option is to pay them on that weekly, fortnightly, monthly basis, because I think if people were paying them more like that, it wouldn't be so overwhelming when they get the quarterly bill. Just as a standard run, this is how we do it. We pay them weekly, we pay them monthly. You opt out of that. You don't get to choose that, or you don't go there when things have gone pear-shaped. That's the first start. You pay them like that, because I think in my experience, you tend to be able to cover your bills if you break them down into smaller portions. That would be what I would think maybe a good way to get ahead of the future. You know, but that's the bare minimum they pay them, and they opt out of that and choose to pay them for a longer period.
Yeah, good idea. Question I'd raise from Chair is, legislatively under the Ratings Act, are we able to have a default position that's not quarterly? I don't know the answer to that. I think it's an idea that maybe you take away and report back in the next report as to whether we've got any barriers to changing from asking for a good $1,000 every quarter to
have a look at
give us $100 every week, or
well itself. You know, we say reach out to us for rates, easy pay, or whatever we put on the actual. And you know, the first one's got more to it than the second, third, and fourth installments. So maybe it's a matter of just repurposing the info we.
I don't think people reach out until it's too late, though. Often they're like already behind, and it's like, you know, if it's just you have a new home buyer, first home buyer. Hey, your rates are paid weekly, just the same with all your other things. It's just standard, and it wouldn't become overwhelming.
If you've got a like $4,000 rates bill a year, that's $10 a week. $10 a day.
I'm just conscious, team, that we have first item on the agenda. There's been a really good discussion, but I think, Charlie, you just had a quick comment, and then.
So we've just recently revised our rates and invoices for Far North, and there is a lot of the information that's available through our online services portal, where we're able to encourage people to sign up to things like direct debits and rates by email. We have a little bit more work to do in the IT space to enable customers to self-serve in that area, and once that technology is in line, the intention is that we will be actively promoting that as a service for ratepayers. So rather than Zena's team being addressing issues once they become issues, we can promote customers being more proactive in that space and helping to enable them to address that.
Thank you.
Any further questions, Councillor Belkey?
At this stage.
You made, through the chair, Zena, you made an example of a $12,000 debt. How much on average does it cost the council to do the legal work, lawyers? Is there a cut-off line, and is there a number? Could you bring that to the next meeting? It was a bit chunky now to answer, but.
I can give an example through the chair. So an example is we did start legal proceedings against a ratepayer. It took us just over 2.5 years to get judgment. So it is a lengthy process from start to finish. It depends on, for example, this particular ratepayer, we were back and forth with affidavits. So it did take a long time to get that judgment. Some other options are a lot quicker. For example, the rating cell I mentioned previously, that is currently out for tender with an external real estate agent. That went through very quickly, from start to finish with the legal proceedings, judgment, and that because the ratepayers on board didn't want anything to do with it. So, and it was a vacant land block as well. So it all depends on the situation of how long it takes and how long and how much it actually costs to do that. But when it's recovery and we outsource to our external law firm, we can claim those legal costs back. So we do recoup those losses of us paying out for it.
Worship, you had a
Zena.
very small one.
We have around, what, 38,000 rating accounts that your team looks after. And from these numbers, like say 3,000 accounts are going through this revenue recovery. How big is your team?
So I have a team of 5.
So there are 5 of you that look after this for us. Thank you to the 35,000 rating account holders who sort out their rates for us so that you don't have to follow up on that. But even if you did one count for 1 hour across a 6-hour, 3,000 accounts divided by 6, that's 500 days it would take just to be able to get through this. And if you divide it by the 5 of you, that's still 100 days. But that would be only solely focusing on this, right? So it is a monumental task with a very small team to have to look at. Is the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Through the chair, AI and automation and things like that are going to be things that I'm looking at, putting in here, and indeed of the rate 3 rates. That's what I'm doing. It'll assist with this.
Thank you. It's been a very good discussion. The risk is essentially to our cash flow, and that has to be financed from somewhere. So that comes at a cost. Comes at a cost of Zena and the team and all the good work that's needed. Although it's not nice to say, it would be really wonderful if we didn't need a rates recovery team, but we do desperately, and thank you for that. There's going to be a problem, I suspect, for a while going forward. So we've got a motion on page 10 that we receive this report. Do I have Councillor Verslich, do I have a seconder? I'll second it from the chair then. Any final discussion? Not being any votes in favour? Against, if any? And
In favour.
Thank you. The next report we've got is our Chief of Staff report, and Emma. There you are. Sorry, I've got my reading glasses on.
Through the chair, Morena Tato, the Chief of Staff. This is our quarterly report to the committee. It's an information only report to give assurance at a governance level around cultural leadership and employment risks rather than seeking decisions from you. A few things to point out. Turnover remains broadly consistent with last year. However, you'll note a spike in Q1, and that's July to September last year, reflecting changes in our transportation team. Broadly, recruitment's keeping at pace with our exits, and our key drivers of people risk are under active management. While I'm happy to take questions, there are a few submitted beforehand, so for the chair, I'm happy to answer them now, if that's okay.
Thank you.
So firstly, in terms of, I think it'll be on page 26 of your agenda, under culture, there's a note about our quarterly celebrations, which we held yesterday, actually. A lovely quarterly. We've got two of our new GMs in the room, Hilary and Erin, so welcome to you. But under that, one of the questions was, we talked about 12 staff volunteered to support the mobile ballot box during the 2025 local government election period. So what departments and roles did they come from? So in terms of the mobile ballot box, that was to ensure that we meet our obligations under the Local Government Act when it comes to local elections and polls. So we did have 12 staff supporting that, and they were from right across all of our groups in council. So representatives from every group in council. A couple of questions around executive projects. So the first one was, given the breadth of the executive projects portfolio, how are financial risks monitored and reported? Essentially, each major project includes identification of financial risks, assumptions, dependencies, mitigations, particularly where there's external funding or milestones. And then our regular work program reporting at an operational level highlights any financial or delivery risk. And where that's material and appropriate, that'll be escalated to the governance level, which would be through this committee. And the second part of that question was around independent assurance over major project financial modelling. The short answer to that is when appropriate, yes. So the modelling is typically prepared or validated by our internal finance team. Sometimes it'll be external advisors, and sometimes it'll be delivery partners, which might be like Crown agencies or developers, depending on the project. And then we use independent assurance where the risk warrants it. So where we're relying on something like third-party delivery, where there's stage funding, and conditional agreements, independent assurance in those areas. I'm happy to take any further questions or points of clarity.
Thank you for those pre-circulated questions. It does make getting prompt and full answers easy. Your Worship, have you got a question? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Again, thank you to your team for the fantastic forfeiting and awards today. It was great to meet so many of our new staff, and the excitement in the room was palpable. It was like first day of school vibes. So just the mahi to you and the staff for putting that on. It's really great. I do have a question, but I'll take the opportunity while I'm speaking, hopefully just once this time, to just highlight the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs program, of which myself and welcoming joining me is a fellow Far North rep for that, Councillor Arohanui Allen, that this program, we've got a fantastic team of 1.5 FTE that look after this for us. We're funded $220,000 per annum, actually lower this time round from Mayor's Task Force for Jobs National and Ministry of Social Development. And to date, we've already got 11 outcomes. 11 outcomes means we've got 11 rangatahi who were unemployed, now in mahi in the Far North. Now, based off of that, if those 11 rangatahi were still on the unemployment benefit, they would be costing all of us $206,000 a year. So we've already made our money's worth in having that funding to help facilitate getting them into mahi. We've still got 16 outcomes still to go, but I just wanted to highlight the incredible mahi that we're doing as a council to help our own rangatahi to get into mahi. So mahi to our Mayor's Task Force for Jobs team as well. My question though, those are my highlights, and this is my just questioning. I really appreciated having the kōrero around flexible and remote working arrangements on page 23. And just wanting to deep dive a little bit into that, because one of the focuses of our previous council was supporting staff to have nice workspaces in the office, and we've got Proctor Library that's now saving us money because we've got to leave our lease at JBC. So we've got workspaces there. We've been setting up all of our workspaces here, and our back annex block, we've still got some more spaces. But we do offer flexible and remote working arrangements, and it is highlighted across our surveys as one of the things our staff find best about this. One of the things I would like to understand a little bit better and maybe dive deeper into the statistics so I can have staffs back. Because, you know, on the Facebook and on all of that sort of stuff, everyone always likes to put pressure, and I think undue pressure on our staff around what work they're doing and all of that sort of stuff. But I get to see more intimately the work that our staff actually do on the day-to-day, because I'm at the office every single day as well. But when we have things like the organisation, flexibility is regularly cited by staff as a key strength of the Far North District Council employment experience. The organisation's hybrid working approach, along with guidance for people leaders on how to manage flexible working situations, supports staff to meet personal and location needs while remaining connected to operational priorities and required on-site presence. So one of the models that I've seen that our Northern Regional Council has done, they've switched to a 9-day working fortnight. And then on every single person's email signature, you can see which day is their rostered day off. So they're lucky they get an actual day off, not just get to work from home like we offer our staff. Now, that's helpful for me because as the Northern Mirror Forum chair, my administration support is from Regional Council, and I can actually see when her RDA is. And then I know, like, oh, if I email her today, I'm not going to expect a reply to her until tomorrow. So I wondered when we have in here that we as an organisation are giving guidance to our people leaders on how to manage those flexible working conditions. If you could talk to a little bit more about what that guidance looks like and ensuring that our people leaders, say if I was to, and as appropriate, I'd only speak to SLT, but say I go to Charlie. Charlie, can you please tell me where, how are your teams going today? And like, do you know across the lay of the land, across our 8 service centres, where all of your staff are, or who's doing what and where they are, and have be able to be like, yep, this is where they're all at. So-and-so's at this office, so-and-so's at this office, or this is how I'm managing it, or this is how my team leaders are doing it. If you could give a little bit more narrative to that.
There are some tools we've got to make sure that we can deliver. So one of them is a team's charter template, which sets out essentially what the operating rhythm for every team in council is. So it's when you meet together as a team, what are the 3 days you're in the office together, what are the regular meetings that you actually hold, what are your one-on-ones, all of that kind of team stuff is captured in a team charter. Some of the other support to people leaders is around where hybrid and flexible working situations is formalised. It's done in writing and via agreement between the people leader and the individual, and that will normally stipulate days in the office, even if someone is working remotely. Specific days in the office, they need to be in on a fortnightly or monthly basis. We've run sessions, learning sessions with people leader groups on how to ensure delivery, even though you may not have all of your staff in the office all of the time. And that comes back to our performance framework. So at an individual level, we have a performance framework where we measure each individual's performance on an annual basis. And in there we call them key success factors, but they're essentially the same as KPIs. So things that every individual has to deliver. And if there are situations where flexible working is impacting delivery, then we support managers to have those conversations through that process. But that framework sets out clear expectations of what every person in council is expected to deliver.
Thank you for that, because that gives me the comfort to know that when I'm out there and I am in our community, you're all in the community as well, but you know, when I'm there and people like to approach me to say A, B or C about staff, D, E or F, then I can proudly say, which I do say anyway, but say, actually, I do have the comfort that our organisation is being responsive to the way that we operate. And so, sorry about it. Thank you.
Councillor Foy, then followed by Councillor Smolders.
Thank you. One of my questions about the culture of our organisation, I think one of the KPIs is to have equity across the district in terms of levels of service. We're a really large district. And I was just wondering how the staff, because we don't see the contracts, of staff, how the staff are managing that in terms of addressing that that equity across the district. So we ensure that, for example, ratepayers in Tiku have the same level of service as all the staff who might be based in Kaikohe. How is that addressed was a question for Emma. And the second question I had was about one of our key projects, which is our housing for the elderly, and a timeline of that leading into our long-term plan and our financial planning of the next financial year. July is coming soon. We've only got 5 months. We haven't had a report back that the divestment of the housing for the elderly will occur within that timeframe, so that we can forward plan not only the cash flows, but also the capital works program, and in particular from Waitangi and meeting with the ministers, looking at opportunities to gain funding for new housing for that portfolio. When is the next governance meeting with Whānau Holdings and us, so that we can make sure there's a timeline so that it's done before July?
Not quite on the particular topic, but I'll allow it. And Charlie, you have got a quick answer.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, just in relation to the second question for the housing for the elderly, I understand that our Executive Projects Advisor is working through the process of delivering on Council's resolution regarding rate settings. That's rent settings, apologies. That's due to come through in short order. And we have a Te Koikuia CCO committee scheduled, I believe it's on the 24th of this month, so next week, where the directors of Whānau Holdings will be present to discuss key projects. So we have a governance to governance opportunity to raise the status of the program from their point of view.
So we've got, yes, Councillor Smulders.
Through you, Chair, just a quick question for Emily, please. You mentioned the team's charter.
Sorry.
How many?
Mr. Chair, can Emma respond to my first question about the KPI
apologies.
for levels of service?
So in terms of levels of service, we don't look at it on an equity of location basis, Councillor Foy. We do have staff based at our 3 main centres of Kaitaia, Kaikohe, Kirikiri, and we obviously have staff based in numerous service centres as well. But our KPIs don't reflect specific equity of location, but they do reflect the level of service that our customers, no matter where they're based, should be receiving. So I'm not sure if that provides you the information that you're looking for, but that's how we manage delivery of service. And Councillor Smulders, sorry, what was your question?
How many teams?
Sorry, if I can respond to that. So in all 3 service centres, can a customer go in and meet with a duty planner and meet with a duty building officer, or is it only certain service centres that have that service?
Sorry, to reduce that, but that sort of comes under my proviso, and I couldn't answer you, Councillor Foy, but I can come back to you with that information.
No, the answer is no. Kaikohe is the council headquarters. Kirikiri has a significant number of staff. Kaitaia only has a limited amount of staff. Our other service centres are mainly just service centres for paying your bills or putting in inquiries or library service centre combos. So not a single one of our council service centres acts as a standalone one-stop shop where you can expect to be able to speak to a team member from any single team. They are spread across, but the bulk of staff would be based here in Kaikohe or in Kirikiri with a limited number of staff in Kaitaia.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Councillor Smulders, is your question?
How many teams?
Yeah, many teams. So you're happy with the response?
Sorry, what was the answer?
Sorry, the question was how many teams in council?
Yes, yeah, you said you got a team's charter and you know exactly where each team's doing and what's happening.
Yep, so
How many teams do we have?
each GM has visibility of that within their own groups. I can't give you a specific number because it looks a little bit different. So for example, some smaller groups, like I can talk to my group, we have one group charter rather than for the for specific teams in there. But the GMs have visibility of what the team charters looks like for each of the teams in their own groups.
Thank you. Councillor.
Just a quick question, on the report on page 23 regarding workplace culture, that's in the staff turnover and, you know, we're all aware of staff that come and go. I sort of see workplace culture as quite a big red flag for me. What's in place to improve workplace culture to make sure that people are happy to turn up to work and work, you know, being happy here? Because I think that's something that I feel is a really big red flag, needs a lot of attention. Is there programs in place?
We have a significant number of programs, so I'll try and just rattle through them quickly. We have things like the quarterly celebration yesterday, which is to celebrate the great mahi that's happening across the organisation. We have a whole succession planning program to try and grow people internally. We have a biannual, so twice yearly engagement survey, where staff tell us what it's like to work at council, and then we, off the back of that, we action things to make a difference in the way that people feel about working here. We have a leadership development program, which is about how we set clear expectations of all of our people leaders, and then how we build their capability off the back of that. We also have learning and development systems, so Pacifico is one we use at the moment. Individual upskilling for everyone, including independents have access to that as well. We have a diversity, equity and inclusion program. We have regular people leader hui to talk about what's happening in the organisation, but also to look at where we're making improvements, along with a weekly high five shout out to staff that are doing cool things for that week. There's a lot that I guess sits in that program around culture.
And you feel confident that those are effective and working well and getting the results you want?
Generally, I mean, I think in terms of the culture of the organisation, our engagement survey is the real tool we use to tell us, and that's an actual score that you get at the end of that engagement survey. So we're actually just about to run our first survey of this calendar year this month. So I guess off the back of that, we'll see how people are feeling, how effective some of these things are. I mean, certainly if they're not working and people want to see something different in terms of how we build our culture, then you're very.
We get to see the results of the engagement survey.
You will in a summary form to give you the level of governance comfort that you need about how it's being managed.
Thank you. I guess getting back to my initial comments, what are the risks? And the risk that we're looking at here is, do we have the staff to do the mahi? Getting the right staff. Josh knows.
Just through the chair, I just want to add to what Emma says, that workplace culture has been identified as a risk at council, and we have been looking at it. So to provide that assurance, it's on our register.
Thank you.
And this report gives us some level of assurance back as governors that that's being addressed. The other one I've noted down, and I quietly clapped when I heard about the number of rangatahi that have been placed into employment. The risk there is that we're not shouting out enough to be able to make sure everyone knows what's going on there. And if we don't actually publicise and blow our trumpets fairly publicly, there is of course a risk to the funding stream, and maybe we can get some more to do better. And I see that on the other side as a potential risk. So certainly I'd be encouraging let's get this good news out that really made us, made us all have a very happy moment. I saw Councillor Foy and various others clapping there. I've also noted that Councillor Foy, I think, has got another question. Have you?
No, no other question?
Okay, Councillor Smulders, I think you had, but that's just linking back to what are the risks we're addressing to the organisation and what are we doing about them and what assurance does this group get? I'm trying to keep that thought process in front of us.
Well, it's just are we an employment agency providing brokership for Rangatani for jobs, or are we a district council? So it's just a counter argument, probably not for the risk committee, probably for.
It's probably for another location, but I have seen an increase over the last probably 10 years in councils of councils being asked to do jobs which traditionally might have been done in central government. And that's a philosophical question, which I agree is outside, which I express no view on.
I can give some commentary to that. We are one of 33 councils that are part of the Ministry of Social Development's Community Employment Program through the Task Force for Jobs, which recently celebrated its 25th year of operation. And while traditionally that isn't our council core service, the Minister of Social Development has been a strong supporter of the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs and the power of local government to actually know its local communities and through localism to have better connection than their own central government agencies in the regions. And we're seeing the fruits of that at no cost to our ratepayer.
So the question that probably comes from that is, are we getting enough funding to cover all our costs so it's not an indirect tax onto local ratepayers? I think that's probably where you were heading with your thoughts. And Councillor Foy, you've got something in the chat which I'm trying to read.
Oh no, I'll address that at the CEO performance review. It was just about the levels of service and interpretation of that KPI. In another committee.
Forum for that question. Thank you. We have a recommendation on page 19 that we received the report from our Chief of Staff covering 6 months of this financial year. Do I have a mover in that direction? Councillor Smulders, you happy to move?
Yes.
Thank you. Councillor Erstich, thank you. Any further last comments? If not, all those in favour? Against, if any? And no abstentions are noted. Ian. All right, you're coming up to join us. Thank you. Sort of the key points, if we may, out of this. It's a very extensive report, and there are some points that probably need some comment on.
Good morning, everyone. People who haven't met me, I'm Ian Wilson. I'm the Health and Safety Manager. I'll take the report as read. If that's okay, and just invite any questions that you've got around.
From myself, I'll kick the ball off on page 31. 9 out of 16 of the incidents were threatening behaviour. It's unfortunately a pattern that I'm seeing at other councils, and a bit of commentary on where things are at in the country. An emerging issue. Would you have any comments on that to make sure that our people, after doing their party, go home in as good a state as they arrived?
Yes, so we've got a number of controls that mitigate some of that risk. So we've got a compulsory conflict resolution type training right across the organisation now for all front-facing staff. And over the last few years, I've really spread that training out wide, and how it used to be focused on our compliance staff that would do a specific level of conflict resolution training, and then our front-facing staff such as libraries and from counter. But now, this last year, now I've rolled that out to basically everyone who's working in the field has done one of the forms of conflict resolution. So this year, in the last 12 months, I believe, I've put about 250 staff through that training. That really does give them some confidence and confidence around dealing with some of the situations that they might come across when they're working in the field, because as you all know, our customers and ratepayers are blind to what your role is in council. If they want to get their point across and they see that you've got council badge on, you are council and you're expected to know everything about everything. So they do have a little bit of training to be able to deal with that, and it's much wider. And like I say, that is a compulsory training course that everyone goes on, and then it becomes a rollover refresher. One of the areas of work that I'm doing at the moment is a review on our loan working procedures, so that we've got a better methods of tracking our staff, and then for high risk staff, then that they've got a direct way of sending out an SOS. Particularly, one of the main challenges that we've got up here is the lack of mobile reception. So we've got satellite, we've got a certain number of satellite systems available in our vehicles, and then a specific handheld loan worker device that talks to those satellite systems. They're all being reviewed, and as part of that review, I'm actually intending to reallocate some of our existing kit into what I consider higher risk roles, such as monitoring and building compliance in the first instance. And all management have always had it and are exceptionally good users of it as well. I've had some challenges with uptake of use of kit from some of the other teams. And so part of the review will be ensuring that the various team leaders are aware of their responsibilities and are accountable for ensuring that their staff are protected. And just on that area of loan working as well, I have trialed a very cheap and easy system that could solve a lot of our loan worker issues if I can get it across the line. I have put together a business case that currently I'm talking to JC about to take to SLT. And I would say that SLT haven't seen it yet, but it basically just revolves around the use of WhatsApp. The WhatsApp, everyone is very familiar with it. It has a share live location function on WhatsApp. 1NZ now have just rolled out voice calls using WhatsApp via satellite, which rules out the mobile reception black spots that we've got. There are a couple of challenges around using WhatsApp, mainly just there were some questions from IT around accessing of the chat data, which it can be exported. And my proposal would be that team leaders of the teams become the holders of that data so that no data is deleted and can always be accessed should there be a requirement for it. And then the other challenge is that currently we use Spark for our mobile, and we need to use 1NZ if we want that satellite accessibility. But if we can overcome those barriers, we've got a free app that everyone is extremely familiar with using. And we did manage to do a trial of it during the mobile ballot boxes last year. And it became more than just a lone worker system, really, amongst the people who were doing the mobile ballot boxes. Once they got used to registering the live position in the morning, actually became a form of chat and communication between the people who are out there. So they had a real good open communication about what's going on, what people are doing, that sort of thing. So that could be a really good, easy solution. Might answer your question.
Thank you. On page, through you, Chair, page 32, Ian, that says that elected members also have the same process as staff to be logged incidences.
Yep.
So if my incidences during this report, which is September to December, are not captured in this reporting, then does this committee have a complete picture of the council's health and safety exposure?
Yeah, so if you've got incidents, health and safety incidents that you want reported, they can be logged. Yeah, so you just,
So my point is they're not, so therefore this committee does not have oversight on them.
I don't
We have a
know,
list
have you
of
had
your-
some,
Pardon?
have you had some incidents?
Yes.
Okay.
So were those,
Governance, can you give an outline on how you capture those, because you're our interface? And then where that should be carried on to be on here?
So I'm trying to recall whether we've given any training to our elected members on
I haven't.
the system, and I suspect we haven't, so we'll ensure that a link is provided to all elected members and you understand the process so that you can.
Councillor Smulders, who did you report to in this organisation, the incident that you,
The CEO.
the CEO?
And it says in here, and on page 32, that we need to contact Democracy Service who will input the information on our behalf.
Correct.
I know we had a focus on this in the last triennium. So I suspect that what we need to do is get a consistent approach coming through, which everyone knows very clearly what the process is to make sure we're getting all this data captured properly. And it's sort of
Especially for our
to stores
community board members.
and community board members also.
Yep.
Unfortunately, this is becoming more of an issue that I'm seeing it. I think if I can safely say every council that I'm on, there are people who are perhaps not taking forward their views in an appropriate manner. Is that a question or a?
Question, yeah,
is
my
it-
original question, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this report outlines hazard and risk management for staff in this organisation, and we've got a little bit of commentary in there around elected members driving on council business, lone working, psychosocial hazards, maybe not so much contractor management, site visits and threatening behaviour towards customer-facing staff. All of those points, I think, would apply to elected members, and we have 30 representing the people of the far north. We, as elected members, now through the Remuneration Authority determination, can get cameras. Through council, we can access EAP services, and members of the previous term did and got a lot out of that. But those are reactive measures. We're seeing and hear some of the proactive measures that are available to our own staff. My question is, what is the appropriateness of, or if not, for governance to Democracy Services to prioritise ensuring, and it came up in the last one, we had a workshop specifically, we had 5 years about the AP services and things like that. But I don't have a first aid certificate. I think it would be quite important for myself and elected members who don't just have it anyway. But if council is already bringing St. John to provide this for our own staff, that we can jump on the course as well. Or the health, safety and wellbeing programs that you run, so that I feel happy to drive myself to a meeting with someone and I've got the tools in my kit here to look after myself, and I want that for all of our other elected members as well. So what do I need to do to follow up, or how can we look into making this a priority, acknowledging the fact that we have just come through an election, but we're getting into the mahi of council now. So who's going to sort that out for me? Because it's not something this isn't the first time it's been brought up. Like, we followed it all through the last triennium as well. And that's really a question for you, JC, and for you, Aisha.
through the chair, that is something that we can take away. It's not a democracy services responsibility. It's something that we can work through health, safety and wellbeing. Keeping in mind that we want everyone to be safe on council business. However, staff are employed by council, and so we have employer obligations, and elected members are voted in. So it's a little bit different, but we are
Factors legislatively, but that doesn't stop this council from supporting us to access EAP services afterwards. I just would like the organisation to support elected members because you're already paying, or we're providing these services in-house already. Or I'm saying that it needs to be a part of induction and contracted externally out. So that is yours because that's democracy services. So
both health and safety and democracy, but we'll take that away and bring that back.
So if I can bring this to a head, there are issues out there whether people are employees and therefore caught under offshore electorate members, in my view, is irrelevant. Legally, Guy has, as our CE, has got legal responsibility there, but every one of us involved anywhere in governance I think has an incredibly strong moral responsibility to be able to be supporting Guy and making sure he's got the tools and to effectively act as if we owned it as electeds. And I think I see no difference in protocol that should be applied to elected members as opposed to staff members, just because of how you got to this table and involved with Far North shouldn't make a difference. So if I can encourage to get clear lines in place so that everyone can be caught on a moral basis, if not a legislative. Ian.
Yeah, just to follow up on what Mayor was saying. Every member of staff at council has got a role profile, or a health and safety role profile. Actually, a simple document that outlines health and safety mitigation measures we've got in place, the various critical risks that Mayor has just listed, plus what PPE they require, what training they require, that sort of thing. And it wouldn't be very difficult at all for me to create a very similar document for elected members, give very clear indication of where their risks are covered, what training is available for them as well, and then for us to involve them on that.
thank you. I would rather do it before someone actually gets hurt than sit around here to reflect on what has happened to someone and what we should have done for that to give them the tools to be safe.
You just think of the paperwork involved. Okay, so, you know, I think we've got a unanimous view around here that we're all part of the Far North whānau. We need to take care of everyone. So irrespective of how you ended up joining this journey that we're on. We have a recommendation on page 28 for receiving the report from Ian and his team. We're happy to move. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillors. Bursvich. No final comments? All those in favour? Against, if any? Was that in favour, Councillor Foley?
Yes, in favour. I think last time I said in favour loud and scared Emma, so I was trying to do it quiet.
Thank you. I did move very quickly, and by the time your reaction was, I was wondering whether you were against. I just wanted to clarify that, and no extensions have been noted. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is our financial report. And Ian, you'll have something again. Thank you. Sorry if I end up squinting at you. I put my reading glasses on so I can actually see the small print in the report. Just wondering, Ken, whether it would be possible to, the way this came out in my presentation, You're only using about half of the page. I'm wondering if just in formatting it might be able to be looked at going forward to get larger numbers.
Okay, yeah, these Devil's copies, it's, apologise for that, I'll have a look at that.
Yeah, just whether they can be, fit columns or whatever. Just take it offline and just see whether it's possible. I'll just trust that if it's possible, it will happen.
You can do it all in A3.
If it's useful, we can work with democracy to put that attachment. Attachments on.
Yeah, so maybe in the preparation, have a look for anything that's a bit squishy. Yeah, because then with my reading glasses, some of this is pretty tough.
Yeah, so this is the financial report for the 6 months, year ending 31st of December 2025. Included for your information and oversight, governance oversight. I've included a detailed commentary there, which can recirculate to each of you by email if it's too difficult to see. Highlights or main things to comment on, well down in revenues in terms of the current budget for the year, 132 budget, 101. It's reflective of the capital works for roading and for waters, wastewater and water supply. In terms of the actuals there, if you look at central government subsidies, it's $5 million, 5 million. That's 3 of that is Kaikohe project, and 2 of that's roading. So you can see the substantial budget at this time of the year. And the reason for that is that roading is well behind with the government taking that over at the start of the year, getting cadence there and investigating the works, inventories of all the roading works and getting capital works undertaken. The maintenance season is picked up substantially, November, December. So that's reflected in some of the costs, but overall message from this is that the roading and waters works are well down on budget for the half year. In terms of expenses, got detailed explanations in there. Expenses, we're 10 million over. That will come back into line by the year end though. So as a consequence, it's 6 months of the year, you've got a unfavourable variance, quite a substantial unfavourable variance. This will come back into, this is forecasted to come back into line at the end of the year though, as the works do pick up. There's one area though, which I draw your attention to, which is now that there is 0 currently. There's nothing here, no activity undertaken there.
Any questions? I think Councillor Vesvich, you had some.
Yeah, in terms of risks, focusing on this committee, just had to say that point. Ken, when I look at some of the funding, for example, reduced funding by NZTA, roading footpath, you mentioned a few other things as well. Question relates to those too. And in terms of roading, is there a risk of losing NZTA funding because we're not moving fast enough these areas? Just that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah, there's certainly always that risk, but it's a 3-year program. So I think we're in year 2 at the moment. So even if we do not meet our objectives for the year, there is another year to catch that up. The maintenance with the cadence I've seen with the expenses, which you'll see further down, and the amount of work that's been undertaken in the rating season, I'm pretty confident that that's going to substantially change. For CapEx, I don't know, I have to check more in detail with Andy, the new transportation manager, and our strategic advisor, Rob. My concern is more the waters area. We've got budget in there with Kaikohe, but we've got 0 activity undertaken. Certainly Kaikohe, there's $3 million there that's been charged. That's in full swing. So we've got 0, 6 months into the year, we've got 0 for Kaikohe. It's timing, there's a timing difference there. So obviously when council has done the annual plan. It was adopted last year, 1st of July. It was anticipated that there would be car activity in there. To date, there's none. So that's a risk. As for having funding withdrawn, no.
Before we move to Councillor Foy's question, I think Charlie may have some more comments on that. Question.
Appreciate it. Yeah, just at a macro level, as we transitioned into the hybrid approach with the transport team, we have been working very closely. We identified the risk around the NZTA funding. And as we're working through all of the information and data, we've been working very closely with them to, really articulate and prioritise the works which are underway. So as Ken's mentioned, there's been an awful lot of work over the construction season, which hasn't been reflected in the report yet. So there will be a timing difference as we catch up in that. It won't make all of the way through the difference, but we will be working closely with NZTA to give them confidence that over the 3-year program, the works will be delivered. And anything that we don't have confidence in, we'll obviously have that conversation with how best to deal with that. It's leading into the development of the activity management plan for the next funding cycle as well.
So we supplementary before we move to Councillor Foy, just on the phasing and we set the budget with phasing in it as our best estimations at the time. And it's not just a blanket spread across the year. Thank you. Councillor Foy.
I know this is the Audit and Risk Committee. So in terms of risk, I just wanted to highlight the relationship between the committee that I chair, the Infrastructure Committee, and your Finance Committee. Through you, Mr. Chair, is the procurement aspects of our council under this committee?
The management of risks out of procurement would be under this committee, but the actual procurement itself would be under the Infrastructure Committee, would be my immediate take. We're looking at the risks of inappropriate contracts being awarded, fraud risks within procurement, making sure that proper process has been followed, or where process has not been followed, it's been appropriately authorised and is very visible, would be the split. I'm not interested in getting to understand which supplier we've gone to or anything like that. It's that it's all about the process is where our risks are.
Great. So I just wanted to highlight one of the aspects about the bundling of our works program over the next 2 years to do that catch up. Our council has an emergency panel where we had a panel to decide on the emergency works to catch up with our work program from the slips, because we fell behind with that work program for roading. What I can see as a concern is that that we don't have that allowance to broaden the scope of that panel. And my understanding is that NZTA are supportive of a change in methodology to a panel to be able to have procurement bundled and sped up so that we can deliver for our ratepayers in a timely manner. Why I'm bringing up for risk is that there's, in order to make that change, this committee will need to be happy with that risk, and also in NZTA. I think that's a particular concern to me as the infrastructure chair and in our infrastructure committee, that matter is addressed as early as possible. Because with the catch up in the work program that we need to do, we need to ensure that we get our contractors, number one, aware of the work that needs to be done, and number two, that we can ensure that that work is done within the construction season. We don't want anything being done obviously in the middle of winter. So previously there's been concerns and pushback at an operational level for us asking concerns about procurement, but I think this is a fundamental risk element with both NZTA and our council and this committee about how we address procurement and using those panels as a tool to get more things done with less expensive processes and less timeframes and held up within the process. Are you able to comment on that, or are we just able to take that offline and have that discussion between our committee and your committee, Graham?
I think what you're indicating is that our procurement policy may need some revisions. And I think that's a process we should go. Just because it's on a cycle for review in 18 months' time doesn't mean to say that's written in concrete. We've got to be alive to what's changing in there. And if necessary, it sounds to me like we might need to have a look at that policy, and I'll leave that for staff and SLT to have a look at that to make sure what we've got is workable. Because if we've got a policy that's frankly not workable or not responsive, then it needs to be revised. But you guys,
I don't think this is a policy issue. This is specific procurement panel or contractor panel, where there was a proposal to expand the scope of works that could be put through that panel. And I'm not sure we got to with that. Michelle, do you have any comment on?
Yes, through the chair, yes, we are in discussions with Andy and his team to look into the viability of expanding the panel and looking at how we can strategically use that. We've developed a development panel of smaller suppliers on that panel, which we are looking to use for our capital works and sort of build them up as well. We're also looking at putting the low cost, low value works panel. So we are talking with NZTA to expand that. So
Chair, Councillor Foy, thanks for raising this. I think we address this in Te Koko committee, but I will just make sure we're up to speed on this one, because I was aware that that work is in progress, and we're very keen to expand the capability of that contract panel to accept more works. So we'll get an update for the Te Koko committee.
Who's the owner of the procurement policy? Called us straight off. Charlie, and is that a policy that's finally approved by council, or is it an SLT policy or a chief executive's policy? As far as final,
it's an internal policy, which I understand we've recently had endorsed by NZTA for the transport space as well. So what we just need to do is make sure we'll provide a verbal update to Te Koko, and if there are restrictions or limitations within that policy that we need to be cognizant of in reflection of this, then we'll bring that information through to that.
Where I was getting to is this: who is the ultimate owner? Is it the Te Miromiro has to sign off, or is it somewhere else? Because we've got a difference between council policies and those that are policies effectively of the CE coming down. And I was just trying to work out who the owner is. One of my questions that I've had in past meetings was to get a one-page summary of the status of all our policies with owner, revision date, and if they're overdue or not, because that's risk management. But I don't want to be getting this committee's hands into stuff where we shouldn't be going. So I was just trying to clarify that. So maybe if you could pick up that point I've made in the last try-in about having a one-page, just an information sheet, doesn't need to be voted on or have resolutions, but just on the current status for noting, paper for noting, effectively on where our policies are at, who owns them, so we as a committee can make sure that our policies are up to date and current. So can we just leave, perhaps acknowledge Councillor Foy's point, and if there's any issues coming out down the track, perhaps bring it back to the committee. But I would hope that it can just be actioned by the sound of things, and it's already underway with the ink still a little wet.
Can I just say that it's not actually a council policy that design
dictates this. It's actually an NZTA policy, and we include our intentions in the transport procurement strategy, which is endorsed by NZTA. So we're following their manual, and if we want to expand our supply panels or change them in any way, then we just need to go through the NZTA process.
So the golden rule applies. They have the gold, so they make the rules.
Yes, yeah, we just need to be clear in our strategy as to what our process is, and then have that endorsed by NZTA.
And the risk in this is that this council doesn't follow the approved process. We incur costs and NZTA turn around and say, sorry, you didn't follow the right process, we won't fund it, to get back to the risk concept. Thank you. Is that
so? Yeah, it's good to have that debate. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to highlight to the procurement staff that there hasn't been any mechanism for governance to feed into this, and it being a significant risk and has evidently shown we haven't been able to deliver our work program because of it. It's a key factor. And expanding the scope of that emergency works panel to ensure that business as usual works can go through with NZTA approval. We'll have that conversation up front, but we're now at the end of February. The construction season would only be until April. If we don't have this sorted and it to my committee, I think it's not next week, I think it might be next week, then we'll miss this construction season. So in terms of risk, yeah, it's a significant risk about if the procurement staff don't bring this to my committee.
Yeah, just Mr. Chair, I just want to raise another risk, and just for future maybe brought to this committee, and that is again around roading. So as chair, Councillor Ford, and that is I was last term where, and it relates to climate change as well, which you mentioned, where NZTA or Kotahi may downgrade what we would consider a major storm risk to a normal event. And therefore our roads need to be of a standard, and we did receive resilience funding to do that. That can meet, the 40 mils that happened in 1 hour recently in various other places on the recent events we're seeing. So are we covered? And that's the question, are we actually covered? Because if there's a major storm event, we have a whole lot of slips and various things occur. They may say, no, that's just normal for you guys up here. It's all within your budget. See you later. And we do get a significant funding for major storm events from what Kotahi. I'd just like some information coming back to see if we're well placed in that area in terms of risks.
Yeah, as far as funding for culverts, because that type of thing for runoff, which was something that former Councillor McNally was always hot on. And trying to announce the prevention's worth a ton of cure in this. So it's good that we're getting these points made, and they'll be captured presumably into the minutes as a follow-up action. Make sure that happens, Councillor Vucevic. Any other comments before we have the recommendation on page
just in response to that, very quickly, because we don't when we receive resilience funding, for us in our local network, it's never enough, so we try and make it stretch, right? Whereas for NZTA, when they're self-funding, like for the reopening of the Mangamukas, you can either build back or you can build back better for it to be more resilient. So the Mangamuka Gorge was built back better, ended up costing $205 million or something like that, off an initial $100 million that Cabinet signed off to open that back up. But what we've seen is that through all of the storms since the August 2019, 2022, whatever it was, is that the work has held up because it has been built back better. When we have 167 slips from Cyclone Gabriel across our local network that we have to fix, and then we applied for emergency funding through NZTA to repair those, it's never enough. We have to put in a local share for us to then, we try and build back better, but you try and make money spread. So while we have resilience, it's called resilience funding, it's repairs funding. I just want to make the distinction that we're never going to have enough money for our network or for the condition of our network or what we need sorted. We've got some pretty exciting stuff that's coming this term across our affordability portfolio, across our roading portfolio, but we'll be kidding ourselves if we think that we're ever going to get enough money to not only play catch up, but also play future forward as best we can.
Which may result in the councillors having to think about some hard decisions that when it comes to annual plan and LTP about what can we actually do, what is our core services. We may have to make some decisions about things that we say that we're not going to do. I have heard of a council actually deciding that they're going to actually take the tar seal off because they can't afford to maintain it on some minor roads and get it back to just a grader once every few months, just simply because they don't have the funding to do that. So these are the hard decisions that you will be facing coming forward, and there's risks in this. We have a resolution there on page 33 if there's no other. Councillor Vucevic, you're happy to move. Do I have a seconder?
Question submitted. This one, Brian.
You've got one more question.
Forward, I put forward. You guys go.
I haven't been provided with those.
Okay, that's right. I will follow it up to.
Does any of the staff know about this question and brought?
For the water supply and the external services, there's milestone 5 payments, 308K to Te Kahu o Tainui initiative.
Oh, I've got an analysis for that. Do you want to talk about it?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This is related to application of DIA funding. So there's a project organised for the support of a TIO portal.
What, sorry?
A TIO portal.
This was signed off in our first year of our first term through the Better Off funding under Labour's 3 quarters.
So I can provide you more background to that, Councillor.
So that can be taken offline.
Yeah, thank you.
Excellent.
I just have, through the chair, just one last comment. So this is a lot more detail in your reporting than you're used to. This is a work in progress and it's being upgraded every month. So you'll see when we get to the program around fraud controls, you'll see the program that's being undertaken around reporting analysis, balance sheet mapping, etc. Which is why you've got in this report, in these reports, a lot more detail than what you've had in the past. It will be refined, but I just wanted to include a large slice of what you see in terms of variance analysis.
The danger of detail is that we get dragged down into the weeds instead of staying in the helicopter at a governance level. But the whole system needs to get right down. Ultimately, so people on the ground have got the tools to actually understand and manage a little bit of the budget, but we're sort of somewhere further up the pyramid. So it'll be a balancing, but I do acknowledge that the work that's being done is pretty formal to allow the tools for the people on the ground doing the mahi to actually. Sorry, Councillor Foy, you have an additional question?
Oh, it was just if I needed to move an amendment to reflect that for the procurement and Ken to come to my committee about those finance and procurement matters that interrelate with the delivery of the work program for capital works, or is that going to be standard?
Do we need an amendment, or is it just being noted that it should go there to you as the chair?
I understand it is in hand, so we don't need an amendment to do so, or a motion. We haven't formally moved a motion yet.
If I may,
I
through
guess.
you, Mr.
Yeah, sorry.
Charlie's just got a comment.
Councillor Foy, SLT are working through just the information to go to committees versus the operational briefing points. We're expecting to land on that on Friday and update the proposed work programs, which we will share with the committee chairs to make sure that we're comfortable with the information that's coming through. So the capital reporting side of things, we will make sure that that's delineated appropriately to provide governance assurance on the end-to-end capital works delivery, including the procurement matters and areas, that may be warranting governance attention, we can definitely dive into those.
If we leave the resolution as is and add a note to the extent that reporting out to the various committees is imminent within the next few days, which would hopefully address many of the questions that have been raised as a formal note added.
Thank you.
And just into the minutes of the meeting.
We can definitely add a note, yes.
So that will then come up when we look at the next lot of minutes and approval in the normal cycle. So you've got Friday as a target point, potentially. Okay, now I think it's been moved and seconded. We didn't get a seconder. John moved. I'm happy to second from the chair. All those in favour? Against, if any? Carried. That completes the public point of the agenda, which is pretty close to our take a break provision and standing orders. So I propose that we have probably a 10-minute break and then move into PX. So we'll need to move at this juncture that we move into PX. The matters and the reasons are set out on pages 38 and 39, along with noting the matters that will be discussed within the PX forum. You're happy to move, Councillor Birchwood, if I have a seconder. Councillor Smulders. Any discussion? All those in favour? Against, the opinion? Let's take a break and be back here at say 12:05.
What you said